Howdy folks, this is Father Dougal 9000 here, and welcome to another episode of Dougal's Game Finish Chronicles, a series where I talk about the games I've played and beaten as part of the Hardcore Gaming 101 Forums Game Finish Challenge. Due to the haphazard way that games are scheduled to appear in episodes, as if I'm an entertainment manager booking guests for a chat show apparently, it's not often that games get tied together by a theme. But in today's video, the games are indeed connected by a concept. Running and jumping. Now, the running and jumping tends to vary from game to game, and a lot of things vary from game to game actually, but that's the magic of life. You appreciate what works have in common, and what makes each their own unique thing. Today's games were originally logged from the 24th to the 30th of May 2021. Kirby's Dream Land for the Game Boy. Alright, some vaguely personal stuff for a moment. At the time I played this, I'd been told that I would be getting my first vaccination at some point during the next week, but that I could be called in at any time due to being on a reserve list. I'm very particular about having some amount of certainty for when things will be happening, to the point where having something really ambiguously placed in time really throws me off, because I then don't know what to do in the meantime. And in this case, I ended up grabbing a bunch of Game Boy games that I could play on my modded 3DS and stop playing at any time in case I got called in. Which brings us back to Kirby, which was one of the games that I got. I went with it largely because I'd always heard it was pretty easy and basic. To be honest, I assumed that was rather exaggerated. Like it only came off as really easy and simple in comparison to other Kirby games or just by video game standards, but would still actually be quite challenging and all that, but no, they really weren't that far off. There's only 4 stages, followed by a bus rush, and all you can do is suck, spit, and flutter about the place. I was especially surprised because I thought that the version that appears in the Superstar Collection was a truncated remake, except it's more or less the same but with spruced up graphics and music. But that said, the core design still works quite well, and it's nice having a game that's so basic. It makes for something I could easily revisit whenever I'm in the mood for it. And you know, if you want something a bit more challenging, there's always the extra game that unlocks when you beat the final boss. It's not something I'm ever gonna go near since I honestly find regular Kirby taxing enough as is. But it is a very good example of the kind of options offered in the Kirby series. All of the games, as far as I can tell, are pretty accessible challenge-wise, but there's always the ability to increase that challenge if you prefer something harder. Whether that's getting the highest scores in Epic Yarn without getting hit, or playing the extra game in Dreamland to take on tougher bosses. It's awesome, and it adds another reason to revisit the games if you're in the mood for it, so hell yeah, Kirby's Dream Land. Bepisman for the Windows. At the time I wrote this, I had had a bit of an irritating kerfuffle trying to clear certain games, but then running up against walls that I can't overcome. Like fighting against King Dedede in Kirby's Dream Land 2, my emulated copy of Donald Duck Going Quackers constantly crashing, and the awful, truly heinous mandatory tilting puzzle in Professor Layton and the Miracle Mask. Out of desperation, I quickly looked through Pico 8's in-system game store and see if I could find anything that I could beat in a few minutes, and I luckily have this thing. I beat it in 4 minutes. This is a short Pico 8 running game posted by Xtor, based on the infamous Bepisman game for the PlayStation, and the Bepisman meme that spun off it. They're basically the same character, I think, except this lad drinks the fake soda Bepis. It's the internet, I don't understand it either. It's a straightforward conversion of the Bepisman game where you run into the screen and dodge all manner of obstacles while collecting soda cans to increase your time limit. There's only one level, but it's quite a good game that carries over the qualities of its inspiration in a technically impressive way given the super scalar style running into the screen visuals. It's worth checking out if you got a couple minutes to kill. Jumping Flash for the PlayStation. Say what you will about the PlayStation Classics library, a lot of people have, but one thing that I'll say is that while it may not be full to the brim with universal classics like other mini consoles of the late 2000s, there are plenty of games I've always wanted to play but never had the urge to check out properly until now. And one such game is Jumping Flash, a first-person 3D platformer from 1995 that, despite some mildly clunky controls during the corridor stages, hits upon its core concept really well. The game's very easy to get into, and navigating such vertical stages while looking for jet pods and avoiding enemies, sometimes even bouncing on enemies from a 50-foot drop, makes for a unique experience I haven't quite seen elsewhere. Add on some excellent music and quite good visuals, and the result is one of my favorite PlayStation platformers. It also does the Ghosts and Goblins thing of making you play through the game twice in order to get the best ending, though the only things that change are some remixed level layouts, changing the jet pod positions, and sometimes making you start from the other end of the stage if it's one of the corridor ones, and a shorter time limit. But it's actually quite manageable since the damage output doesn't increase, so it makes for a nice remixed campaign instead of feeling like padding. So, you know, there's more of Jumping Flash to play. Hell yeah, Jumping Flash. Good video game, goddammit. Hell yeah. And with that, we've wrapped up another episode of the series. I hope you enjoyed watching, and that you'll tune in for the next video. Thank you so much, and until we meet again, have a wonderful day.